Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us at another GoDaddy Pro event. This week we are have amazing guests. So we've got Jean Perpillant and David Yarde, and I am so excited to have both of you on. I know we've been talking about this for at least a good month and a half. And so we've been working towards this event specifically, and I'm really glad to have you both here. If you could give us a little brief introduction about who you are and what you do, and then we can dive into the content y'all are looking to bring today.
Awesome. David, you gotta go first, man.
Why you gotta put me on the spotlight?
Because alphabetical.
Okay, cool. Well, we're doing last names. So I'm David Yarde. I started out doing design and stuff in the WordPress space, became a software engineer. Now I do brand strategy consulting, helping people figure out where tech and design meets business. I love entrepreneurs. I love nonprofits or impact-driven companies. But lately, I've been working with a lot of interesting clients, everything from venture cap to I don't know, community initiatives, which sometimes I wonder, how did I get here? I have a tiny human, awesome business partner and life partner in doing amazing creative stuff. Yeah, I get involved in a lot of weird things. People call me Batman because of my weird night habits. And I'm awesomely excited to be here because Ali was really nice in shouting that out. And I was like, oh, great. January is not going to be not busy at all. And then always catching up with old friends and doing cool things like this is really exciting. So, yes, I'm done.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. My name is John Perpillant. I'm with Design Theory. We are a small agency here out of Orlando. We've been in business for a little over 12 years. Helping small businesses create websites and online presence, as well as creating strategy for marketing and for business growth and brand development. I also have a tiny human, as well as two other bigger humans. I've got a 13 and a 12 and a 3-year-old. And let me tell you, it's fun. It's fun trying to manage all this stuff. But just like David and like Sandy, this is something that, we're looking forward to doing. I think that we've got to give a shout out to Ali for kind of putting us on the spot and kind of starting the snowball. And so now we're here. And so thank you, GoDaddy, for having us. And hopefully we'll be back for more. And this should be an action-packed hour. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot that we want to hear from all of you in terms of your questions. We'll put you in the driver's seat to tell us, what you're thinking about doing and what you want to do or what your questions are. And we'll put our hats on. We'll give you the best, consultation that you can get, in these parts. So, yeah.
And with that, I am going to let you two take it away. I'm actually going to hop off camera so that way I can manage chat and Q&A and all of that for y'all from the side, but make sure that you guys get to have all of the space on screen that you need.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Ooh.
Okay. She left us the keys. I don't know if she knows what she was doing, but we're in here now.
So since you made me go first in the intro, you got to go first with the topic.
Okay. You know what? And I figured I'd start this one super easy, and then we'll kind of disseminate from there, right? So first thing I wanted to kind of get into, which is exactly what we're doing right now, video. For the past several years, when it comes to video and marketing and everything in terms of business, this is where it's at. If we look at what's been happening with, most of the social networks, like Instagram, when they started to, it was more on photos, and then it was Instagram TV and IG Live and Facebook Live, YouTube Live, even Twitter was in the mix with Periscope. There's LinkedIn. I was very surprised when they decided to create a live option, let alone, really starting to support video, not as long form as some of these others. But I think that video is probably a really, really good marketing tool that a lot of people may be shy about doing. And I kind of want to demystify that a little bit to kind of let you know that, hey, if you have, one of these, if you got your phone, chances are it's a late model phone that could do really well, both either on the reverse side or the forward facing side. Creating a quick video, even if it's a couple times a week, short, doesn't have to be long, just has to be something to where you're talking about what you're offering, talking about your best or your unique offer, your MVP in terms of your products or services. Just kind of give people the understanding of how you're unique and what you're here to do and how you're here to help them. A lot of times when we think about video, we're like, oh my gosh, it's me and how I look and what I have prepared, and I have to be all dolled up or anything like that. It's not that at all. As long as you have your phone set up, or even if it's a phone or your webcam on your computer, and just set up in a way to where it's stable, you're in a quiet room, so there's no background noise. I know we're all working from home, so we've got our little ones running around, but if you can't keep them at bay, just for a few minutes for you to kind of record something and say, hey, this is what we have to offer. This is why it's awesome. This is why it's unique. This is why it's better than what's out there. This is why it's, newest, or whatever that it is. Whatever that value is, that value statement needs to be, put that out there, and then reiterate that, through different perspectives, as often as you can. So I wanted to start there, but, again, David, I know you're doing the same things. What do you think?
So, I think video and audio are where it's really at, right? We have not just the recent popularization of Clubhouse, but you have podcasting, right? Amazon's getting into that game.
Wait, what's Amazon doing? Hold on, slow down. What's Amazon doing? Are they starting to host?
Yeah, where was that article I was reading the other day? They bought Wonder something. It began with a W. But Amazon, hold on, podcasting, this is the power of Google. So Amazon recently, where are all the, oh no, never mind. They're doing music now. Yeah, so Amazon Music launches podcasts for customers across the US and the UK, right? So you could stream it there. And they also bought a company. Goodness gracious.
Sandy put in a link to it as well. And I think, okay, and Adam just put a link.
Wondery. There we go.
This is new to me. Wow, check this out.
This was about 3 weeks ago. Okay. They purchased this company called Wondery, which is a podcast kind of like producing company. So they're getting into the creative side of this whole spectrum, right? See, Adam dropped it there for us. And it's great to see how amazing marketing moves so quickly. Kind of like how it mentioned there, but it's also amazing to see the areas in which communication is kind of going back to. We're dropping that fancy approach. Like even video, it's like, it's not about being fancy. It's about like just getting the information out there, information that people can follow, that they can track, that they can implement and see if, okay, this works for me or this does not work. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I think for video, it's evolving where creative storytelling, and I think TikTok is driving a lot of this, and Instagram Reels and, other story platforms, where even me changing my plants, right? Like making snippets of them, growing new ones. I can make a fun video out of that other people enjoy, to the point where they're creating content about, oh, me and my daughter just, did some clippings of our own and started some new plants. And I'm like, oh, that's nice, right? Like now we have that connection. Now we can talk, right? Now we can really build into something. And yeah, there's a new avenue for marketing where you never thought about it before in your audience, where it's like, oh, what about people who are busy consultants who want to garden more with their kids? I could start something there, right? Overlaps with the education. So if you know your market, if you know who you are, what you're trying to do, you can really dive into like having some fun with your marketing strategies and campaigns. So
I agree. Go ahead. I was gonna say, going in with having this different element of video to share gives, like you said, like doing planting or gardening with your little ones. It gives a different perspective of who you are as well. And I think that's another thing that people are really looking for, especially right now where we don't really have a lot of the traditional medias in terms of movies and shows that we would typically get because of COVID, where now a lot of people are kind of looking towards creators, towards business owners and things of the like, to say, hey, how can I get to know you a little bit more? And so if I can resonate with you on, I know that you sell this product or service, But if I can resonate with you because you also are a green thumb and you like to garden, and maybe you have a own mini garden in your backyard, you kind of talk about that a little bit. It's like, wow, I wouldn't have. It's kind of like the modern day networking, right? Where it's like, I happen to be next to you and you happen to be saying this with somebody else, and I happen to hear that. And it's like, oh, wow, we have that in common. And that draws me closer to you. And I think that that's the thing. Those are some of the things that I think that people may not be thinking about when it's like, when we say, hey, create video content, talk about you, talk about, what you're into, and kind of share that a little bit.
So here's an interesting thing that you just kind of brought to my mind, right? If people don't know themselves or what they're about or who they're trying to speak to, it becomes pretty much impossible, right? Everybody is your audience, quote unquote, at that point. Everyone needs my product. Everyone, this will change everyone's life. And the reality may be, no, it could be just chiropractors who, treat golf patients. That's your audience. Okay, well, how'd you figure that? We took a look at the data, right? We took a look at who you're speaking to. We look at, other solutions in the space and said, oh, why are you speaking to these people over here who are driving convertibles and this stuff? Like, they're fine. Right. You want these people over here who have the constant battering on their joints. Like, this is what you do. So if you don't know who it is you serve with what you do, it's going to become impossible to share what you do. And then you have the next part where you take on the technical debt, right? Because now you're building the platform and saying, oh, I need all these features, and you don't know the features that actually solve the problem. And then some poor developer gets the blame because he's like, first you said this is what you want.
Right.
It's a vicious cycle. It's a very vicious cycle. So I think that was probably one of the reasons why I transitioned out of development into more of the strategy side, is because the marketing aspect can drive so much of your product success or failure. But that marketing side comes from what is the inner core that you drive or live by. Is it strong? Is it clear? Or is it just, trying to be, like Adam said, this overly polished thing? Right? So, yeah.
Let me ask you this, because you kind of tap into this too, and I think we have a question here. But if you think about when you think about a business and their relationship with a developer, when they're looking for a developer, when they're even thinking about, hey, I need to up my technical game in some way, shape, or form, whether it's my website or my, or my online presence, right? You kind of tapped in on this, and I kind of want to take a few minutes to kind of talk about why it's important to actually have a relationship with your developer. And the reason being is because, in my opinion, is that as your business is growing, your developer needs to be there. So when you create your online, whatever that it is, even if it's something with, one of those, out of the box type of setups, right? But you still got someone to help you do that. And as your needs are going to grow, that developer who was there at the beginning should be along the way, because they're going to understand that, hey, your needs are growing. There was a plan, or we knew that this was going to happen. And so we're going to be along the way for you and say, hey, we recommend this. And now that you're here, we see that you crossed this milestone. We recommend this, and we'll be along with you, because we know where you came from. We know where you're going. And I can't tell you how many times that I've come across, business owners and entrepreneurs or whatnot that, come from one place and then go to another place, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to start all over, and I don't want to do this, and I don't understand that, and da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, probably because no one's actually been along there with you. And that's, a really crucial thing. Technology is constantly changing. And if you're getting into business for whatever, maybe you create, shirts or mugs or clothing or whatever that it is, that's something that you're going to be focused on. Working with a creative, especially working with a developer, that's what they're going to be focused on, all of those technical things. So that's why you go to them with your questions, you go to them with your needs, and they're along the way with you. And so I would say, number one thing before you ever get started, if those of you that are watching that haven't just got started, or if you're in between, see if you can test your relationship with your developer, or even court one before you get started, and kind of give them, say, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing over the long haul. How does that work with with us and you? Are you going to be along the way? And is there a retainer for that? Or is there, catch-ups or weekly check-ins or monthly check-ins? Or how do we make sure that this relationship nurtures over time so that we know that as we need things, you're not just going to not be there and we have to start all over again or try to find somebody else?
So, all right, there's a lot there, and let's unpack this one, because I think contingency plans are the #1 failure points within projects, where it's like, oh no, my project failed, I don't know why. And it's like, did you have any sort of documentation, first off?
Mm-hmm.
And I think developers, I mean, being on both sides of this aisle, I get it. Developers could be flaky, right? And then you have the developers that will literally burn themselves out till they cannot give any more in that capacity. And so you want to be able to understand it. I think this is where empathy kind of comes in at the beginning, where it's like, if you have that relationship and you respect them on a human level, you know that what they're bringing to the table is going to help either expose what you're doing as something that isn't worth doing, based on the proper research and due diligence that's done. Or if, you go through it, you realize that, oh, this is something that helps magnify the idea in such a way where it's like huge, it's amazing. And I think really going and diving into that documentation, right? I mentioned it earlier, but it is super important.
Yeah.
Knowing what your brand stands for at the basics, knowing what platforms you're using, knowing what technology stack you may have. Like, that's information that you should have and constantly keep as updated as possible. Because with so many shiny object syndrome, like, you will, like, if you ever go into some people's like Chrome browser and it's like, oh, your password has been in like 20 different breaches, and you're like, okay, that's not bad. But then you see the number below, it's like, you have 879 passwords. Are you using all? And I'm guilty of this myself, but there are things that you sign up for and you forget. Which one are you actively using? Which one is, on your subscription? Like, there are so many things when it comes to the business side of being a successful programmer or running a successful programming initiative that we often overlook. And that spills into the marketing side, where it delays, let's say, a campaign. It may delay, a budget window or relevancy in terms of context. So yeah, there's a lot
there. I know. We could do that one another day, and unpack that one even more. So hold on. We have a couple questions I just noticed that we missed from before. First one was, when creating video on phones, what is your go-to process or app for quick edits and uploads to whatever platform? I'll kick this one off because I just realized this. For those iOS users, if there's a Clips app, CLIPS, and I remember when it came out a couple of years ago, and I kind of got on it for a little bit, but I didn't really use it. What I didn't realize is that there's an option in there. You can use it to create videos, put it on yourself, you could record or whatever. But one of the really cool features about it is that it has subtext, or the captions, or your, I guess, subtitle. So it actually includes that in the video. And because a lot of video that we're consuming, both Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, even, where a lot of consumers are actually consuming or watching those videos with the sound off initially, having videos that have the subtext in the video actually perform a lot better. And so if you're looking for a solution for being able to create some, quick videos, maybe, up to a couple minutes, the Clips app, it's free on iOS. You can download that. And then there's a feature, and you can do edits on there. You can edit, the length of it or whatever. And there's some other graphics and stuff that you can add in there. So I would almost say it's almost like your full studio, close to a full studio for for very minimal side of things on your iPhone that you can use. And again, it's free. And then once you're done with that, upload it and you're good to go. So, that's my first tip there.
Yeah, mine is a lot more complicated. Yeah, I'm not even going to go into mine. I don't know why I take the long way to things sometimes, but basically, TikTok. I think the captioning on there is kind of cool sometimes.
Okay.
Where, I don't know, just that style of writing it out whenever I do it. There's also an Android app that I downloaded, and I think I paid like $2 or $3 for, and it just puts the auto captions in there.
See, great.
I mean, yeah, it was pretty nice too, because I think I got it basically for free by doing a little Google rewards. So, I mean, that's another thing. I think accessibility. One of the things that I saw today, you know, given that it was the inauguration here in the States, when there was a point where it was a national anthem. And there was another thing that happened. It probably wasn't the national anthem exactly, but the sign language interpreter, right? And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, right? And it kind of took me back to when I was learning sign language, and I was like, that is so awesome, right? Like, see this forefront in like a stage. But then when you think about the platforms, right? Like you said, many people aren't necessarily listening to it with the sound on. They may be at work in a meeting where they're trying to like quickly dull their sense and get a dopamine hit so they don't fall asleep. They may be in the grocery store walking, and they also may just want to judge the quality of the video, right? They may want to see like, oh, this is worth me actually putting the sound on and hearing what else is going on.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and it also comes in pretty handy as now AI and all that other stuff is able to read video content and imagery and text within videos and all that stuff. It helps for organizing it better. Knowing the things that you're actually talking about, is it relevant to that, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like its own SEO in a way, if you think about it. In video SEO, that's a phrase that we're coining today.
We'll take it.
Yeah,
you do have to optimize that, you know.
Yeah, and so it's like, how do you optimize for that though, right? And I think this kind of ties into the next question, like what are some specific platforms, tactics you're getting client success with lately? So client successes, I'm not going to name the client, but I'm going to say watching them over the past year, little over a year, it's been remarkable. I would say they've gotten a lot of great results from, you know, Facebook. When they're doing joint ventures, I find that's a very community platform. For their own personal stuff, LinkedIn and Instagram. Their biggest traction, however, has been from Twitter, oddly enough. And yeah, the tactics behind that are very simple. They got to know who they really want to serve. They found the problems that they were trying to solve that aligned with their passion. And then they just double, triple down upon that. And when they found the areas or things that were really working, they pushed even more. And then, of course, they didn't wait for the market to tell them what to do. They kind of brought something new and refreshing to it to say, here's a different, I guess, a sense of hope, a way of doing something differently that you never really thought about before. And failures, I will definitely say, for me, I wasn't necessarily a marketing failure per se. It was more of the entire relationship behind it, right? It was kind of one of those things where you had great hopes and you invest a lot into it. And the person is looking more towards the, again, shiny object syndrome. Like, look at all the cool things that I could do. And they want to ignore all the work that goes into building something solid, right? And I think the disappointment in that was really because of how long I knew that person. And so it was one of those rare relationships where I was like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming at all, right? But, so yes, it was a pledge of allegiance. I was right. Thank you. But yeah, I think from those two things, I think relationships like these, I value a whole lot more. Because despite ups, downs, whatever we meet each other or wherever we see each other in life, it's kind of like a pretty straightforward thing. When we get together, we're really trying to make the world a better place. And we have our own unique skills, and we're going to transition through a different set of skill sets along the way. So to your developer point from earlier, how do you transition those skills from point A to point B? Well, a lot of developers have the ability to fail often and walk away with, their sense of mind intact, right? Analyze projects and break them down to smaller pieces. Like, those are a lot of soft skills that could be easily transferred from one area to another. So yeah, I'm done for now.
Okay. So for me, I would say I'll start with a failure, because this was fairly recent, where we're going to keep the things anonymous, but where being a consultant, really, coming from, again, the creative space, the designer space, all of that space, people will look to you for questions on, like, how should I proceed with this? And when you do take the time to investigate and do research on what would be the correct approach on something. And in this case, I spent a lot of time doing that, actually connected with a CEO of a company. And because I had another interaction with him prior to where I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to bring this person in. I know we've already looked at all these other options, narrowed it down to 3. Going to bring in this person who's the CEO, from this company, from the software that we're going to use. And I want them to be able to talk about, what they offer, as well as all of our pain points and what we're looking for in the solution. And before that meeting could happen, this client went ahead and signed up with somebody else. And in doing so, it was through a platform that I was not necessarily enthused about, but it was like, okay, well, this is where we're going to go. This is where we're going to go. And all throughout the development of it, we kept on running into roadblocks, kept on running into hiccups, kept on running into compatibility issues, kept on running into options that were not there. And then it was like a host of other add-ons that we then had to purchase in order to try to make things work, and then to understand that things didn't work the way that they really promoted it. And then now we're having to Frankenstein stuff. So for me, it was a failure, because it was like, I think that we probably should have spent a lot more time kind of vetting out really our whole process of what we wanted to do, and not just jumping in, because it wasn't going to be like a cookie cutter. Hey, we just need to do this one thing. It was like, hey, we need to do a lot of different things. And all of these things are not standard in almost anything, but how close can we get, and who can get us the closest there? And so for me, I would say that was a little bit of a failure. And I mean, we're kind of, punching up to make things work, but it's like, in retrospect, it's like, I think we could have done better had we maybe spent a little bit more time. And then, actually had more conversations to kind of court our potential software choices to, see what was going to be our best option. When it comes to successes, I think that one of the biggest things, and I kind of want to segue into this if we don't have too many more Q&As or questions, is consistency. Every time that we create strategy for customers to be consistent with their publications, whether it be through blog posts or through posts on socials or through emails, that seems to be the best. And when I say consistent, I'm not talking about like, once a quarter. I'm talking like, if possible, like once a week with an email, several times a week with social posts, and then, cold calling, surveys. Anything to where we can make sure that we're talking with the customers or the audience and say, hey, how are you guys dealing with this? Or do you need more of this? How'd you like that? Let us know what you thought about this. And then it kind of gets us to really understand what people are thinking. A lot of times when we get into business, and I'm definitely guilty of this, when I first got started, it was more of like, hey, I want this. I want these bells and whistles. I want this to work this way. I want things to look this way. And I want things to progress in this way, and not really thinking about like, is this really the best option for the customers that I'm looking to attract? You kind of hinted off before about, identifying your customer, which is, creating a customer profile, meaning, who is your ideal customer? Where do they get research from? Where do they search for this? What is their common challenge? And then how does your product address that challenge? Who's the decision maker? Is it a business of certain size? Is it just entrepreneurs? Like, all of these things and more are ways to kind of identify that avatar. but then making sure that you're communicating with them on a regular basis, so that way they understand that, hey, this is the source of my, or this person is the source, or this company is the source of my insight when it comes to this industry or this product and things like that. I can't tell you how a lot of times people, when they get into business, they think that, oh, I'm just a small guy, you know, what can I, or a small girl or whoever, a small person, how can I really permeate the market? And believe it or not, I would say as a consumer, we're almost always looking for the next thing, the newest thing, just because it's like that person, again, I resonate with them because this is how their approach is, or they mentioned, you know, they really, you know, they have kids of this age and they're juggling, you know, parenthood and this and this or whatever. And it's like, I don't care how much more expensive you may be, I'm going with you, you know, because I resonate with you. And then I fit all those, you know, avatar, you know, checkoffs and things like that. But, you know, we can't lose sight of those things. They're very, very important.
So, all right. Again, a lot to unpack. So here's a question, though, that you kind of brought to my mind.
Okay.
What do you think is the biggest fear most people have when it comes to marketing their thing?
Yeah, I think the biggest fear is almost twofold. And I put two off the side screen, but twofold, where one is anybody going to see this? And am I doing this right? Is it the right time? And is probably a third. But those two things are probably the biggest fear factors, I feel like, because I've been there. And it's like, you know, am I doing this right? And chances are, if you're just getting started, you're not. And that's totally okay. It's totally okay, because here's the thing. If you just get consistent, right? And you do that thing every week or every other day, and you just be consistent with it, you're gonna get better. It's just like riding a bike. You're not going to be popping wheelies on that bike when you first get on there. You're going to be with training wheels, probably with two, then with one, and then you'll hobble along and you'll just be able to ride it without the training wheels. And then maybe after a couple of weeks, you could ride with, you know, without touching, with one hand, or one hand on the handlebar, and then two. And then we could work our way into, you know, the ramps and all this other stuff. But you are not going to be starting off with, you know, with having the best presentation of who you are, your brand is, your products are, right off base. And that's okay. But don't let it be a limiting factor to not even let you begin. Please begin. Please continue to. Don't so much worry about the feedback, you know, take into consideration, but don't so much worry about it to let it hinder you. Those are probably the two biggest things for me.
So perfectionism. You touched on that right there, right? Because even if you've been doing it a while, you kind of look back and you're like, oh no, what have I done? You know, is this going to be as good as the last thing that I dropped? You know, what if this flops? What if it fails? And I think that weird imposter syndrome kind of creeps in, no matter if you're a beginner or you're later on.
Absolutely.
But then documentation, I'm going to keep coming back to this, because I swear to you, there have been projects that I could have wrapped up 10 years ago had I just looked at my notes, right? And then I also look at like 10 years of notes about the same thing from different perspectives, kind of going over the same like points and being thorough. And then I'm like, oh, maybe that was supposed to happen, right? But none of those two things I would have known had I not kept track of what I'm working on, who I was meeting with, you know, what were my goals at the time, who I was trying to reach, the person I was trying to become. If I didn't find a way to align those, I don't think, you know, a lot of the friendships that I have now would exist. And I think it's very funny when a lot of times I get this question, it's like, oh, how is it for you to market things so easily? And I'm like, I don't think it's that easy. Like 9 times out of 10, I think maybe one person is going to show up or sign up for this thing at all, right? So anything, you know, 1 and up is a bonus to me. I enjoy it. Like, all right, cool. But then also it's like that serious responsibility, because you have so much perceived influence. Or it's like you...
Oh, that's so much pressure too, the perceived influence. Yeah.
So I don't quite understand how it forms, number one. But I will say, after watching people over the past 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 years, and the way in which they take stances on certain things at certain times, this is where I see the dark side of marketing often being, where it's a convenient for me to talk about, let's say equal rights issues, or, things going on in our environment, or, child abuse. Like, it's convenient for my brand when it really should not be, right? Yes, it is very sensitive, but I think in the core of if your brand mission or vision is to, let's say, provide equal opportunities in food distribution, but on the back end, you're making sure that only people who look like you get those opportunities, there's a problem, right? Your marketing is going to be off. Your employees are going to see that, and your employee branding and marketing is also going to be off.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to impact, internal morale, which is going to further impact product development, which is going to impact sales and marketing,
Yes.
right? So when it comes to building that brand, there's so much more to it than just like, oh, I'm gonna throw this thing together and slap a logo on,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you have to actually, you're believing in something a lot bigger than yourself. And so if you don't feel the confidence in that thing, I think you're not going to share it, number one, right? But then I also don't think you're gonna give it the true justice that it deserves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. It's been a weird, vicious cycle for me personally. Like, marketing is fun. There's a lot of data and theory, and we can, talk about how to best optimize your site and do clicky things on there. But at the heart of it, it's like, what is the story that you're trying to tell?
Mm-hmm.
What is the journey that you're guiding somebody on, aka the funnel, right? And what is the end result that you want for them to experience and have?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Ooh. So,
This is good.
Sandy asked the question: would you say a brand is a breathing entity?
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no. Yes, if it is coming from an individual. No, if it's coming from a corporation. One naturally
Okay. Let's see. Let me hear what you got to say about that one. Okay.
so one naturally has it, right? Like, your personal brand is really your character,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it has two sides to it. The sides that everybody knows and sees, right? Like the top of the iceberg, and then the bottom, everything that makes it up, right? The trauma, the history, the experience, whatever. On the corporate side, it is more an assignment of meaning, right? Where it's like, here's, like, this could be a brick for all everybody knows, right? But it's an actual phone, right? I've assigned the meaning to this inanimate object,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now you see it everywhere, and it's filled up of people that maybe have bought into this ethos or idea that I've, set together. So naturally, no, the corporate side is not necessarily a breathing, soulful entity. It requires soul, which is why human resources is kind of a weird name to give to that department. Um, Should probably be human support, something of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
because you're supporting the people who are giving of their time, their own personal capital, right? Their body, their mental state, to furthering a goal or something of that nature. Um, on the personal side, I think when it gets into being a manufacturer,
Oh, David, if you could hear, I think we just lost you. Froze up for a second. All right. While we work to get David back. Oh wait, there you go.
I'm back.
All right, great.
Cool. It gave me like a message. So what I was saying was, I think when it comes down to like developing out that personal brand,
Mm-hmm.
manufactured, if you're trying to be perfect, it could be a disaster in the waiting, right? For instance, Tiger Woods, that's been the popular documentary that I've seen out lately, right? His life was generated to be this perfect Gulf, family type person. And when that kind of had a crack in it, the water pressure from that just really burst it all open, right? So yeah, it could be authenticity. Adam mentioned this earlier. Going back to that, that's important. Like, if you're messed up, just admit that you're messed up. If you're flawed, you're flawed. So I go with Batman because that dude is messed up. So there you go.
Okay. I think that a brand could very much be a breathing entity on either side. When I think about, I'll take it from the bigger brand perspective. If you think about, like Disney, or like, Coca-Cola, or like, one of those, Sony, those brands are breathing brands. They have characters within the brands, or spokesmen, if you will, or spokesmodels, or whatnot, if you will. But they themselves, if you see that logo for the business, or even if you see something from that brand, it reminds you of what that brand actually means. Which means that if it's there, then that brand has some kind of presence. To me, would be breathing, almost, if you will, within wherever that it is. So, for example, you think about sports events, there's brands that will showcase their characteristics or their logos or something. That means something, because to them, that brand is saying, we enjoy this sport, or we enjoy this player, we enjoy these shoes, whatever that it is. We enjoy this mug, or whatever that it is. And so, therefore, it lives, even though it's not there, or even though it's not the main part of that thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so on the personal side, it could be that too. And I like what you were saying about how, the Tiger Woods example, because on the personal side, this is probably one of the most difficult things. When you're starting out, or when you are the business and you are the figurehead of the business, separating yourself from the business there, but you're the one out front. You're making the sales calls. You're in front. You're doing the media. It's your face that's doing the talking head videos. It's you doing the promos or whatever. It's things like that. So it's you have a logo and all that other stuff. Yes, but you're the front of it. So therefore, if something happens with you, it also happens to the brand, and so therefore it's still living there too. So that's my take on that one. I feel like you can kind of look at that. You can kind of, it's different for every business. I should say it that way, and or organization. But it's a really good question, because how you decide to nurture the brand in those different avenues and in those different ways is very, very important. I think that because essentially a brand is what the organization stands for. It is a representation. It is a symbol of that brand.
All right, I see where you're coming from.
This is what we do. This is why I like it. This is why I like it. This is what we do. When you first started, I was like, ooh, I'm about to get him. Hold on.
I respect. I mean, it's the humanity, I think it comes back to, right? Because that Walt Disney story is kind of crazy. And to see he never saw that vision really manifest itself to the scale that it is now. And he probably would be proud with his world domination tactics. Because, I mean, you think about it, Universal has similar parks and structures, kind of all over the place, but they're not like that cohesive, right? Yeah, I think when you give a brand a soul, the very cool thing can happen. It can grow, it can, regenerate, it can, be in sync with the world around it. But I think the bigger part that really differentiates that living, breathing thing for me is the conscience side of a brand. And I think the internal mandate of that brand, for instance, right? It should be a lot more specific. And I think a lot of brands, when they're doing their, mission statements, vision statements, all that kind of stuff, do the thing that sounds like it's the most marketable versus a thing that's most ownable and actionable, right? Because it's great to give everybody access to whatever platform that you're doing, but ultimately, what is your platform really doing that's different ultimately from the competitor, right? Like, are you constantly showing up to say that you're better than the competitor? Because that can only last for so long, and you're going to have a bunch of competitors that your time and energy and efforts are going to be diluted over trying to track? Or are you going to take more of the forward offensive kind of approach where you're laying down, this is who I am. This is what I'm seeking to be. This is the journey that I am on. This is, the things that are going to happen along the way, the people I've hired to help me do this, thing. That goes a lot further, right? You have a lot more content that you can create from that. There's a lot more you can share to show that this is who we are, the culture, so to speak, of your brand. And then if you're doing products and services, people will be like, oh, that makes sense for you to release that because you were, focused on this thing over here or doing this thing here. So yeah.
Okay.
I like that explanation.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I think we could dig into that a little more too. But okay, so we're almost at the top or bottom of the hour, depending on how you look at it. I wanted to get into seeing if you don't mind giving up maybe a couple of secrets, and I'll give up some too, in terms of your outlook for this year. So 2021, we're at the beginning of it for the most part. And what are some things that you're going to do? This is yourself. Or for your organization, agency, however that you want to get into it. But what are some things that you're going to do? What's part of your strategy toolkit for this year? I'll let you go ahead and go first. Or you want me to go first? That don't
matter. Okay, so strategy toolkit. I think this year, the decade or theme that I started for this decade in 2020 was Project Moonshot, before I knew that the world was going to go to hell in a handbasket. But I think that theme still applied, where it was like, despite those obstacles on top of everything else for running a business, there's a lot more that I can push and do. And so that was a thing, the beginning of it all. This year is more around the theme of the Ode to the Pathfinder. Basically, one, it was a program that I was in growing up called Pathfinders. For those that know about it, bless your souls. For two, it's kind of like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts merged together with a really strict religious aspect. Do not recommend. But it did teach me a lot about like wayfinding, setting your own course, being a little bit more risk averse into going into the places where others may not have gone, right? Digging for the answers that people may often ask, but or even the most basic one of questioning myself, how far can I go? Kind of like Moana. So yeah, really pushing that. So this year, my real ultimate goal is book, consultancy as a service, or brand development as a service. And then the other one, those are the main two really. Have more fun, right? Like I think I brought a lot of Batman to places, and I keep hearing, oh, you should be a lot more Bruce Wayne. So here I am to troll the world of branding and marketing and get more people into tech and all that fun stuff. And yeah, I think those are really my big secrets for this year. Mind my own business that pays me, be nice to people. And share more content, right? Like I think we've been doing this for so long. There are so many stories that we can tell about the ways people have tried to offer to pay us, and all that other stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things for me is ways that I could make not turnkey, but how do you say, making my customer interactions a little bit more seamless. So there are some products that I want to start to offer, and I want to make being able to purchase those products a lot more seamless. So if it's 5 steps, how can we get it down to 3 or 2? Those are things for me. Consistency is another one for me, and accountability is another one for me. Whether I'm accountable to myself or our agency, or to my clients in a certain way, I want to kind of offer that, but I also want to prune. I think that one of the things as a business owner we don't always think about is that, and I got to give this one to Scott, is that, just not all customers are good customers. And sometimes, just having customers that may be pulling from you in such a way or demanding from you in such a way, but not really edifying your business or really worthwhile of the effort may need to be pruned. And it's hard to kind of, take that in and kind of look at that when you're first getting started. But as you get going, and you start to see your MVP product, right? So like you said, we're kind of evolved where I remember when we first got together, I'm saying, we were doing design development, we were doing all of that stuff, right? Hosting, all of it. And then to kind of step back and look at it, it's like, yeah, there are some people that are out there that could probably do these factors a lot better and quicker than I am. However, I do like, unlike a lot of developers, or like some developers, I didn't say a lot, but unlike some, I actually do like interacting with people. I love talking to people. I want to understand more about what you're doing, how you're unique, and then how I can tell you or use my skills and talents to make that, to bring that to life. And that's something that I would say is almost, I feel like it's a little bit of a secret, because it's like a lot of times for whatever business that you are, don't stretch yourself too thin to try to hold everything. It's like, no, if you have an MVP product and you have a good handful of clients that are always there for that and only want that, focus on that, and then start to see that maybe there's a profile here with customers that just like this, and then you can start to target them even more,
And I think one little hack there, I'm not sure if it was you, Scott, or someone mentioned this at one of the WordCamps, but it was like, look at the customers that make you the happiest, right? And then form like the profile based off of those customers. I think one thing that a lot of people would be shocked to know that I did was I just let a lot of balls drop. One year I reached the point where it just felt like I was about to hit burnout number 4. I was already in the hospital 3 times previously for a lot of stuff, and I was like, you know what? I've already been. I know how to do this. Like, I'm not gonna necessarily lose anything, too drastic. Should be okay for a little bit. I'm just gonna let things fall wherever they may and see what I actually instinctively want to catch. Right. I don't recommend this for anybody. It is a very dangerous thing, especially if you have a family that you're supporting. However, one thing that I did learn was that connecting and facilitating idea growth was one thing I really, really loved. And I was spending so much time not doing that thing. And so, yeah, money was great, the opportunity was great, but at the core of it, I wasn't even giving my best to that because my mind and heart was somewhere else. And so I think when you're approaching any venture, like, where's your heart? It sounds cheesy, it sounds dumb, but like, what is really dragging your mind's attention all the time, right? Speak to that.
All right. And then my last tip would be, my last secret, I should say, would be to outsource the things that I don't like doing or that I don't have time doing. That is something that I've heard too many times, and I just started to really put that into effect really middle of last year. Once I started to, and it's a control thing, and we can talk about control a whole other time. If Sandy invites us back, it's another topic that we can unpack. But giving up control on things that don't need your time and effort as the leader, of your organization is crucial, especially if you can start to work through that in the beginning. It just opens you up to so much more that you could really take your business to, instead of it being like, oh, I see growth. I'm gaining growth over these last several years, where it's like, I probably could have gained that same growth over several months at the beginning and then been so much further with our organization had I just decided, had I finally just relinquished control, where I thought that it had to be with me because only I can do it this way and blah, blah, blah. Nah, it's fine. So yeah, another day.
Thank you so much. Everything you've shared has been absolutely amazing. And as always, I mean, we have had amazing conversations just at other meetups and in person and throughout the years. And I value all of your knowledge and your friendships. So thank you so much for coming on. I do want to have y'all back So we will talk about that afterwards for sure. But as far as next steps, just so everybody knows, this will be recorded and available. And I will be sending an email out so that you have access to that. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us.